Quite rightly, Mazda was unwilling to fundamentally change the design of this 4th generation MX-5, but it has been active in continually updating it. Here we look at the 2024 model year upgrade to this ND series design, which brought a sharper look and various handling updates. As before, there are 1.5 and 2 litre petrol engine options for the Roadster and RF body styles, and as usual with an MX-5, anything this model lacks in outright power, it more than makes up for in agility and tactility. As before, this is a hard car not to like.
Is there another affordable sporting car sold today that rivals the Mazda MX-5's legacy? Probably not. The MX-5 is special. It's rewritten the record books again and again for sports car sales, and its recipe of lightweight, a driver focus, and a simple front-engined rear-drive layout just has an inherent rightness about it that hasn't dated. At its launch back in 2015, the 4th generation version that we're going to look at here built on that legacy, and in the years since, Mazda has been gradually refining this Mark IV ND series design with a range of updates, ultimately creating the model year 2024 version of it that we're going to look at here. People still clearly love this car. At the time of this updated model's introduction, 1,256,745 MX-5s had been produced over 35 years at Mazda's Ujina plant in Hiroshima, with over 135,000 of those sold in the UK. This 4th generation MX-5 certainly had a lot to live up to. The original Mark I version of this Mazda, first introduced back in 1989, borrowed its charisma from classic 50s and 60s British sports cars, and it was much loved, although its early phenomenal global success has proved rather harder to replicate in the modern era. Now that's partly because sales in the affordable Roadster segment are no longer as buoyant as they once were, but it also has something to do with the fact that the 2nd and the 3rd generation MX-5 models became rather bigger, heavier, and a touch less involving to drive. So things had to change. The Mark IV version of this machine, like the original, had to be one that would properly stir the senses and really deliver on Mazda's founding philosophy of Jinbei Itai, the Japanese feeling of oneness between the car and the driver. So this ND series model served up exactly that. It was smaller and lighter than its Mark III predecessor, with a superior power to weight ratio, a low center of gravity, and an ideal 50-50 weight distribution for the perfectly balanced rear-wheel drive chassis. It looks as distinctive as its Mark I originator. It's shorter, lower and wider than its direct predecessor, and it's clearly been created by a team of people with a genuine love for this iconic model line. In both this soft-top Roadster form and in metal folding roof RF guise, it's a car that Mazda claims you'll be able to really connect with, particularly in the updated model year 2024 form we're going to look at here. Prior to this update, this ND series model had already twice been improved with enhancements since its original launch. 2018 saw an engineering upgrade to the bigger of the 2 engines on offer, the 2 litre Skyactiv G unit, which got a power hike from 160 to 184 horsepower. Then in 2022, the brand introduced a kind of torque vectoring system christened Kinematic Posture Control, which was aimed at stabilizing the car through corners and reducing body roll. The 2024 update further added a sharper look, an updated fascia with a larger screen, and handling updates for this 2 litre variant. So what have we ended up with as a result of all that? And does it still make sense in this increasingly electrified era? Well, to find out, you'll need the industry's most comprehensive review, the Car and Driving Road Test. So what's it like? Well, we'll get to the latest updates in a minute, but ultimately, not much that really matters has changed here. If you take the view that a proper Roadster should feel like exactly that, then you'll have very few issues with the compact cabin. Mazda says that the low set seating position and this small steering wheel here free up extra space for your limbs, but the bottom line is that this ND series model is the most compact MX-5 that we've seen since the original 90s version. It feels it too. Now, luckily, you've got this high transmission tunnel, but if it wasn't for that, well, you'd probably feel a touch too close to your front seat passenger. Even as it is, an ill-judged grab for this gear stick might see you rubbing knuckles with their knees. I don't know, perhaps that's the idea. If you don't like this, then go and buy a hot hatch. This, in contrast, is what a proper sports car looks and feels like, which is what the MX-5 has always been. It's a purer form of affordable performance motoring, and it stops just short of the track-style extremes of, say, Caterham 7. Certainly those familiar with the first, the second and third generation versions of this Mazda will feel right at home here. The delicate stubby gear lever, the round air vents and the driver-focused dashboard with its prominent central rev counter, they're all familiar cues to reassure the faithful. Yet, it's a Roadster recipe that we're told has here been reinterpreted for a very different age. So, time to punch the starter, savour the burbling exhaust melody, take to the tarmac and find out exactly what that means. Now, as you might have seen in our introduction, the model year 2024 update that we're reviewing here is one of no fewer than 3 engineering upgrades which have been made to this ND series MX-5 since its original launch. The first enhanced things beneath the bonnet, while the second, that added a clever kinematic posture control system. This third upgrade has added 2 further small changes with extra features: dynamic stability control, track driving mode for circuit work, and for this 2-litre model, a revised version of the previously fitted asymmetric limited slip differential. Now, we're going to get to all the detail on that in just a minute, but before that we need to start with some of the fundamentals here, and that means a look at what hasn't actually changed. Let's start with the engines that are on offer. Both the available 4-cylinder Skyactiv G units remain normally aspirated and defiantly unelectrified. Your starting point of the range is an eager little 1.5 litre power plant that is exactly as it was back at this Mark IV model's original introduction. It develops 132 PS. That's not an awful lot, but thanks to the 100 kilo weight reduction boasted by this Mark IV design, it's still enough to make this Mazda feel reasonably sprightly. 62 from rest in the Roadster occupies 8.3 seconds en route to 127 miles an hour. It's 8.7 seconds and 126 miles an hour in the hardtop RF version. You're almost certainly, though, going to want the larger 2-litre Skyactiv G engine we've been trying here, and this has been improved since this ND series model's original launch. In 2018, enhancements to the exhaust valves, the fuel injectors, the camshafts, the throttle valves and the air intakes were enough to push its output from 160 to 184 horsepower at a heady 7,000 RPM, up from 6,800 RPM. You always did have to rev MX-5 engines hard to get the best from them. As a result, this 2-litre Roadster variant's rest to 62 miles an hour sprint time is rated at 6.5 seconds or 6.8 in the RF. That's a decent improvement from the original 2015 era model's 7.3 second figure. An MX-5, though, has never been about straight-line performance. From the start in developing this Mark IV model, Mazda's priority with its so-called Skyactiv dietary program was less about improving performance and rather more about enhancing what the brand calls Jinba Itai, the oneness of car and driver, which the company does talk about with its conventional models, but absolutely nailed on delivers with this one. The weight of this 4th generation design has been pared back by using aluminium for the bonnet, for the boot and for the front wings, while the soft top hood is also very light, and that improves the centre of gravity. Much of the front suspension is aluminium too, as is the gearbox casing, the differential casing and the bracing that runs down the car's backbone. The virtuous circle of weight saving means that the smaller wheels only need 4 bolts as opposed to the usual 5. Lower rotational masses mean that the brake assemblies can also be made smaller, simpler and lighter. All of this weight saving does make the desired difference. Flick through a series of corners in this MX-5 and it really does feel like an extended part of you as you sense the sharp, direct responses of the Skyactiv chassis, which is not only light but also extremely stiff. Enthusiasts put off by this ND series model switch to electrically assisted steering really shouldn't be. Now the helm here offers just as much of a bond to the bitumen as the old hydraulic setup ever did, and it offers complete confidence in what's going on between the rubber and the road. Is it as communicative as a more track-orientated Roadster like, say, a Caterham 7 or an old Lotus Elise would be? Well, no, of course it isn't, but if you have been fortunate enough to try a model of that kind, then you're going to be just amazed by how close Mazda has been able to get to that level of tactile response without delivering the kind of car that rides like a go-kart. To be fair, the 2-litre version that we're trying here is quite firm over the bumps, and that's courtesy of the stiffer sports suspension and the Bilstein dampers that you get when manual transmission is paired to this engine. It's nothing that you couldn't live with though, and the standard setup that most owners will be happy with on the 1.5 or the automatic variants is actually very impressively composed on poor surfaces for such a focused sports car as this one. You see, the combined advantages of even weight distribution, high torsional rigidity, a low centre of gravity and rear-wheel drive means that this car doesn't need the kind of overly stiff setup that many hot hatches have to have in order to feel sporty. It's yet another thing that'll make you more eager to push this car along on your favourite country road as you revel in the sheer pleasure of being able to rev up to the red line without fear of potential consequences for your driving licence. This is why we think that writers who moan about lack of power in this car have completely missed the point of it. As we've been suggesting, what this Mazda lacks in outright speed, it makes up for with outstanding poise and balance. It enables you to exploit more of its modest acceleration more of the time. Keep your momentum going over twisty roads. You can often reel in far more powerful machinery, particularly in this pokier 2-litre model, which in manual form, along with the suspension and the damping upgrades, has long benefited from the addition of a standard limited slip differential to help to get the power down. As we mentioned earlier, Mazda's updated this diff as part of the 2024 model year update, adding a cam mechanism to the system's conical clutch with a cam angle set differently for deceleration and acceleration. The brand says that this achieves optimal limiting force of slip during both actions, and it makes the car more stable in extremis. Truth be told, we've struggled to see much difference. Maybe we just need to do more track driving with this car. If that is your thing with this MX-5, then you're also going to appreciate the other model year 2024 engineering edition, and that's the introduction at last of a track mode for the DSC stability system. Now, previous to this feature's introduction, it was often difficult to know what to do with an MX-5 on a damp track day. Keeping all the stability systems on would be intrusive to the fun factor, obviously, but turning them all completely off left you open to the slight tendency that all short wheelbase sports cars have of a sudden snap at the limit that might lead you in the guardrail. The new track mode, which is operated by a button near the door, is a really good solution to this conundrum. It allows you to explore the classic front-engined, rear-driven balance on a circuit, secure in the knowledge that there's a safety net in the background. We suppose that brave or foolhardy enthusiast owners could also use it to have a bit more secure fun through wet roundabouts, but obviously we can't be seen to encourage that at all. A more socially acceptable aid to tarmac handling purity is a kinematic posture control setup we mentioned earlier, a system designed to increase stability during cornering without impacting the purity of the MX-5's handling and driver engagement. The KPC setup applies a very small amount of brake force to the inner unloaded rear wheel during cornering. The resulting brake force pulls the body down and suppresses body roll to provide more reassuring cornering so subtly that the MX-5's engaging handling remains unpolluted. In practice, you'd probably be more likely to notice the KPC system's impact on a track than a public road, but in either scenario, the subtle stability improvements are definitely well worth having. Ultimately though, this MX-5 isn't about fancy electronic aids. It's a Roadster instead that harks back to a simpler time when power wasn't the be-all and the end-all. Yes, at the wheel of this car you'll probably be travelling through a set of corners at a fraction of the speed that you might be able to do in a powerful, grippy, four-wheel drive turbo hot hatch, but you'll be having far more fun while you're doing it. Of course, if you can take it onto the track, then the rear-wheel drive configuration will really come into its own, and it'll ensure that this Roadster will remain a favourite with fans of skid control. If you have an empty test circuit, a slightly damp surface, and the courage, of course, to turn the standard electronic stability system completely off, it's sheer magic. The wonderfully incisive short shift Skyactiv MT 6-speed manual transmission, there now is no longer an auto option actually, is another key contributor to the whole experience. And that's just as well because you're going to be shunting around this stubby lever in the box quite a lot to get the most out of those revvy little engines. Like the steering and the clutch, this was another area of driver interaction which Mazda's engineers worked for years to perfect with this car. In fact, just about every part of this Mark IV model appears to have been analysed and optimised. Even the ease with which you can turn a seat and pull up the light fabric hood at the merest hint of inclement weather. You'll want to do that should you find yourself having to take to the highway in this car over longer distances. Progress of that sort is hardly what you call refined, but noise levels at high speed are much more acceptable than they were in the first, the second, or for that matter the third generation MX-5s, thanks to the 30% reduction in low frequency cabin road noise offered by this one. The installation of a partial open close system also helps, automatically raising or lowering the side windows by 6mm when the doors are opened or closed, and that allows for a tighter seal to the roof when you're driving at speed. It's another thing that'll help convince you that this could be a year-round driving companion, compromised only as much as it needs to be. For the first time since the launch of the fourth generation model in 2015, the MX-5 has had an exterior styling update as part of the 2024 model year changes, mainly to the lights. Now we're going to brief you on that in just a moment. Essentially though, really nothing is too much different here. It's short, low and wide. This Mark IV ND series design has from the start been the most compact MX-5 ever made actually. For us, it's also the best looking example of the breed, with perfectly balanced proportions and beautiful detailing that conveys motion even at a standstill. As usual with this model, there are two body styles on offer, this classic soft-topped Roadster and the alternative folding metal-roofed RF variant. Either way, the emotive shape has more aggression in fourth generation form than was previously the case, and a greater sense of energy too, but you would always still recognise this as an MX-5. The design still is true to the classic Roadster principles of a long bonnet, a rear set cabin and a short tail. Unless you count the addition of this test car's aero grey paint colour to the range, nothing much has visually changed here at the side. The profile perspective allows you to better appreciate what the Hiroshima brand has tried to do here with its Kodo Soul of Motion design philosophy. This ND series car is fully 105mm shorter in length than the pre-2015 era previous generation Mark III version, despite the wheelbase only being 15mm mm less. It also stands 20 mm lower and 10 mm wider. Lower and wider is always good for a roadster stance. Short front and rear overhangs deliver this Mark IV MX-5's squatter, more muscular look, accentuated by panels which look as though they've been shrink-wrapped around the car, with the body appearing to tuck into the corners. Wheel sizes vary between 16 and 17 inches, depending on chosen trim. You'll need this top Homura spec to get these smart gunmetal BBS alloys with their emotive red calipers. Of course, as usual, what's more important here is the stuff that you can't see. In this case, a structure which, thanks to Mazda's clever weight-saving Skyactiv chassis and body design, has reduced the curb weight by over 100 kilos, and that makes this generation model the lightest since the original Mark I version. The most obvious change to this model year 2024 era version of the ND series model lies here at the front, with a new headlight design now seamlessly combining with the daytime running lights. They previously were housed rather more strikingly as vertical slashes in the lower bumper. Retaining the same slender shape, the new LED headlights feature redesigned lens signatures to give a more distinctive look. As before, these ultra compact lamp units allow for a low slung bonnet with strong character lines that flow towards the edges of the swept back windscreen. There are light changes at the rear too, where these lamps also gain a new internal lens design, giving a unique illuminating signature for this 2024 model year car. Otherwise, it's all as before. The stubby tail makes a bold statement with an integrated bumper, which is positioned right up high to allow for a tall deck, which enhances high-speed aerodynamics and downforce without the need for a spoiler. There's a high-set rear stoplight, and slim cutouts in each corner of the bumper house small reflectors. On this soft top variant, the light roof mechanism plays its part in the trimmed curb weight, of course. This is a kind of simple, manually operated fabric hood that a car of this kind should have. It's lighter and easier to use than it was with the pre-2015 era MX-5. Opening or closing it requires much less effort than was required with those older designs, so it's easier to just reach behind you and pull up the roof with one hand. And that's a process that really only takes a few seconds. If that is too much effort though, the metal folding roof of the RF, the retractable fastpack version, does the job in 13 seconds at speeds of up to 6 miles an hour. We'd stick with this soft top variant primarily because it looks so much better when the roof's up. It's powerful and assertive, with aesthetics are aided by the way that to further emphasize the driver-focused cockpit-style cabin, the A-pillars, the windscreen header, the door mirror trim and the seat back bars, they all match the dark shades of the ultra-lightweight cloth hood. When conditions allow you to retract the roof again, it stows neatly into a compact space in front of rollover hoops, which are separated by a clip-on wind deflector. The whole effect further streamlines the MX-5 silhouette. Time to take a seat behind the wheel, where more changes with this 2024 model year car become evident. If you happen to be familiar with earlier versions of this ND series MX-5, the first one of those that you'll notice is a replacement of the old 7-inch Mazda Connect infotainment screen with this much larger central display. There are lots of little detail changes too though, minor updates to the instrument cluster, the addition of a new pair of USB-C ports and a redesigned frameless rear view mirror with a slimmer mount. Plusher variants like this one here now get stitched synthetic leather finishing for the center console and also for the dash panel. And this top Homura model now gets grippy Recaro sport seats too. Otherwise, it's as you were. Now, the challenge when this Mark IV design was first created back in 2015 was to keep the MX-5's traditional ergonomic simplicity, but to match it to modern levels of quality, equipment, refinement and comfort. Does it all work? Well, broadly, yes, although folk over familiar with the offerings of Colonel Sanders will find the compact dimensions do take a bit of getting used to as they adjust to the close proximity of the centre console, the door trim and the sides of this narrow footwell here. Mazda claims that this ND series design has a bit more knee room than its predecessors, plus also a bit of extra headroom when the roof's up too. But despite that, larger folk might still like to consider some dietary plans, and all will find the pedal box here particularly tight, so much so that rather annoyingly it doesn't actually provide anywhere for you to rest your clutch foot on longer journeys. At first glance, the conventional handbrake here, that seems to rather invade your personal space, although you do get quickly used to that. An electronic handbrake, of course, that would be a far better solution, although then the potential for handbrake turns would rather disappointingly be a thing of the past. Otherwise, though, there's not much to criticise here, provided you can fit into it, of course, in the first place. You quickly get the whole Mazda Jinba Itai driver and car as one thing, the way the driving position has been created to make you feel a part of this MX-5. We also like the satin chrome finishing now used on the circular air vents and on the door handles, and also the way that the exterior body colour flows elegantly over the door. The sleek wing-like dash here has been styled to try to create more of a feeling of space, with much of the switch gear and architecture borrowed from the Mazda 2 Super Mini. That might sound disappointing, but it does actually work quite well with neat design and chunky tactile stalks and buttons which create a smartly functional feel. It goes without saying that this Homura model's bespoke Recaro seats feel great, but even the standard chairs wrap around you nicely with cushions supported on netting instead of the usual metal springs, and that allows Mazda to reduce weight and seat the driver's hip point closer to the road. A lower driver's position has allowed the windscreen header to shift backwards, in this case by 70 millimeters, which in turn means the hood is shorter and lighter and also easier to package when it's folded up. The headrests feature these compact integrated ultra near field speakers so as to make listening to music with the top down a rather more enjoyable experience. The seat positioning allows you to take full advantage of this Mark IV model's surprisingly good all-round visibility. That's achieved thanks to thin A-pillars and a bonnet positioned 28 millimeters lower than the pre-2015 era model. True to sports car tradition, there's a stitched leather-trimmed short-throw gearshift lever with premium leather on a grippy three-spoke steering wheel that thankfully feels great and also now adjusts for height and for reach too. Through it, as usual, in an MX-5, you view 3 satin chrome ringed gauges with a large rev counter centrally positioned in pride of place to the left of the speedometer. Earlier we mentioned the updates to this instrument cluster here. There's a new black lacquer base colour, a new font for the digits and a sleeker rev counter needle. Otherwise, it's an unchanged layout, and that means you still get this left-hand information display with the fuel level, the outside temperature, the odometer and prevailing speed limits. This left-hand display also has a section that's customizable via an info button on the left-hand wheel spoke here, which gives you trip data, a maintenance monitor and a range reading. Just about anything else you need to know can be found here on the standard Mazda Connect infotainment screen, which, as we said earlier on, is now bigger. It's increased in size to 8.8 inches for this model year 2024 car. That's enabled clearer mapping and touchscreen functionality too for the wireless Apple CarPlay and wired Android Auto smartphone mirroring systems when the car's stationary. As before, this monitor is positioned high on the center of the dashboard in your natural line of sight, and although it features touchscreen and voice control, you can still more easily operate the thing with the silver rotary multimedia commander controller that you'll find just behind the gear stick here. Via this, you marshal the usual stereo, media and informational functions, as well too as the built-in navigation system. Mazda also claims that you can have Facebook posts read through the speakers and posted to you via the voice command system, although to be honest that all sounds a bit distracting to us. As for practical touches, well, you wouldn't expect normally many of these in a Roadster, particularly given that in this one there are no door pockets, no sun visor ticket clips, and you don't even get a glove box actually. Things though aren't too bad in this regard. There's a shallow storage compartment just behind the conventional handbrake for phones and sunglasses. There's a further recess at the base of the center stack there with built-in twin USB-C ports, mentioned that earlier I think. There's also a surprisingly deep lidded box between the seats which is lockable for when the roof's down and sits just above these two stylized removable cup holders. When the roof is up, you'll also have really quite a large stowage space in the area behind you where that folded fabric top would normally sit. Otherwise though, your stowage needs will be restricted to the very limited capacity of this tiny boot. Move out back here and on the face of things, trunk capacity looks to have been a casualty of Mazda's decision with the ND series design in 2015 to downsize the car. Capacity has fallen by 20 litres to just 130 litres in this Mark IV model. Now, the Japanese designers have always contended that this ND series design hasn't really suffered in boot capacity terms as a result of the change, claiming that to compensate, the area has been redesigned for greater usability. It's actually 35mm longer and 36mm deeper than it was with the old third generation design, although there's still no option of through loading into the cabin. Still, the benefits of their rethink seem to have been worth having because where the old pre-2015 third generation model could only carry one airline-sized carry-on suitcase, this car can take two. You could just about fit those cases in the boot of the metal-roofed RF version 2 because capacity there falls only fractionally to 127 litres. 3 tie-down straps feature here and you get a light, but this space won't ever be empty because you'll need to use it to accommodate the owner's manual and the tyre repair kit. The MX-5 may be quite a bit more expensive than you remember. Even in the 12 months since we last tested this car in 2023, prices have risen by a couple of thousand, which meant that at the launch of this model year 2024 design and at the time of this test in summer 2024, Mazda was asking in the £28,000 to £37,000 bracket for this car. As before, think in terms of a premium of just under £2,000 if you want to go from this soft-top Roadster to the folding hardtop RF version, and it's just under £2,500 more to upgrade from the 1.5 litre to the 2 litre engine that we're trying here. There's no longer an automatic transmission option. On to spec specifics. Now, with both body styles, the 1.5 litre MX-5 is available in the two most affordable Prime Line and Exclusive Line grades. This 184 PS 2 litre Skyactiv G model is matched to either Exclusive Line or, as in this case, the range-topping Homura grade. As for rivals, well, these days there really aren't any. Caterham 7 is the only model that really comes close for MX-5 money, but one of those would be crude and noisy and almost impossible to use as anything other than a weekend fun car. At the other extreme of practicality, the kind of budget that Mazda's asking from you here would also buy you a super mini hot hatch, something like a Mini Cooper S or an Abarth 595. They would obviously offer you more practicality, but of course, those aren't proper sports cars. For a typical MX-5 buyer, the difference is going to be important. If, having considered all that, you conclude it is an MX-5 that you really want, then of course you're going to need to know exactly how generous Mazda's been this time when it comes to standard spec. So let's look at that now. Even if you go with the smaller engine and the base Prime Line trim, you can expect to find LED headlamps, daytime running lights, now smarter LED combination rear lamps, a Thatcham alarm and black alloy wheels of 16 inches in size. You'll also get climate-controlled air conditioning, remote keyless entry with the dashboard start-stop button, electric windows, power-heated mirrors, leather for the multifunction steering wheel and the gear knob, cruise control, heated seats and a trip computer. You'll also get the Mazda Connect multimedia system, and that's a setup that now offers a larger 8.8-inch screen with navigation, a 6-speaker DAB audio setup with 2 driver's headrest speakers and Apple CarPlay and Android Auto connectivity. The Apple system is of the wireless kind. Thankfully, Mazda no longer denies customers of the entry trim level access to standard provision of key camera safety features. Most MX-5 customers, though, will find themselves starting their search at mid-range exclusive line trim, which, as we said earlier, is the spec level that you're going to need to get the choice of both engines. An exclusive line model comes with the brand's adaptive front lighting system, also heated mirrors, rear parking sensors, smart keyless entry, auto headlamps and wipers, and the track mode setting for the DSC stability control system that we briefed you on earlier in our driving section. Inside at this level, there's black perforated leather seat trim, an upgraded Bose audio system, and an auto-dimming rear-view mirror. Choose an exclusive line MX-5 with a 2-litre engine, and Mazda will throw in the larger 17-inch black machined wheels and a reversing camera. Plus, all 2-litre manual models get sport suspension with Bilstein dampers, a front strut brace, and a newly redesigned asymmetric limited slip differential to help you handle the extra power through those bends. So you've got the idea then. Exclusive line gives you most of what you'll really need with this car. Still, you might like to treat yourself further, in which case this top Homura variant is ready and waiting to tax your checkbook a bit further. Here, the 17-inch wheels are of the gunmetallic BBS sort with red calipers, and the mirrors get piano black casings. Inside, you're now spoiled with leather and Alcantara upholstered Recaro Sport seats and MX-5 branded door sill scuff plates. And options, well, there's a range of alternative wheel choices. You'll almost certainly be paying extra for your choice of colour because the only standard shade here is Arctic White. There are 6 other extra cost paint options: deep crystal blue, jet black, machine grey, soul red crystal, zircon sand, and a new shade added as part of this update, which is aero grey, and that's the one we've got here actually. Soul red crystal metallic is perhaps the signature MX-5 choice. There is an iBark lowering suspension kit, and you can add Bashduk stainless steel exhaust pipe finishers. You might also want to make the exterior look of your MX-5 more distinctive by adding skirts at the front, the sides and the rear, along with a black rear spoiler. Other optional interior niceties that you can have include an alloy pedal set, a center console shelf net, and a clear wind blocker for the Roadster. You can also add a color-coded key fob and an outdoor vehicle cover to your final invoice. Onto safety, intrinsically engineered into this car, says Mazda, thanks to its SkyActiv body, which absorbs and disperses impact energy to prevent cabin deformation. Twin front and side airbags are standard across the range, as are the usual electronic safety aids, ABS, dynamic stability control and traction control. There's also a bonnet, which is designed to limit injuries if you're unfortunate enough to hit a pedestrian. In addition, MX-5 buyers get an ISOFIX child seat attachment for the passenger seat there, tyre pressure monitoring as well, and hill hold assist to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions. Euro NCAP will be pleased to note that even base Primeline MX-5s now get a full portfolio of camera safety kit too. The tally includes Mazda's front smart brake support, autonomous emergency braking, collision avoidance setup, and a lane keep assist system with lane departure warning. Plus there's also traffic sign recognition and driver attention alert. There's a speed alert system that beeps when you exceed the limit. Apparently you can switch that off, although we found that a bit tricky. And rear cross traffic alert, which warns you of oncoming traffic when you're reversing out of a space. As on other Mazdas, there's also a pedal misuse alert system. Now this warns you when the accelerator and the brake pedal are pushed simultaneously. In a diminutive little sports car like this one, a 100 kilo weight saving, that's effectively the combined average weight of a typical adult and child, is more than just significant. It's absolutely game changing. And that's what Mazda's various Skyactiv design and engineering philosophies have delivered here in this car. This weighs in at only a fraction over the 1 ton mark. A key contributor to the dietary program has been the Skyactiv body, which was fundamentally redesigned at the original launch of this ND series model. This Mark IV design also gained a considerably greater percentage of high tensile steels, as well, of course, as the aluminium that you'll find in areas like the front wings, in the bumper reinforcements and the seat back bars. 2 Skyactiv G petrol engines on offer still haven't been embellished with any of the mild hybrid electrical assistance that you'll find on Mazda's more conventional models, but they do remain pretty efficient, and that's aided by the inclusion of i-stop engine start-stop setups added since 2015, which restart the engine via combustion rather than, as is more usual with these kinds of systems, via the starter motor. Engine cooling is via a small light radiator. Not surprisingly, the base 1.5 litre model is the more frugal choice, offering a 45.6 miles per gallon WLTP combined cycle reading. This 2 litre variant manages 41.5 mpg on the combined cycle return. Both figures were fractionally more frugal than they were when we last tested this car in 2023, and they aren't affected by your choice of body styles. You can monitor your progress towards achieving those stats via a graphical fuel efficiency history screen, and you'll find that in the information section of the new center dash infotainment screen. This incorporates an energy flow monitor that shows the real-time workings of the car's e-loop kinetic recovery system. This recovers energy while decelerating and braking, and the recovered energy is then used to power electrical systems like the audio, the air conditioning, and also the headlights to put less stress on the engine. This ND series model's lightweight also pays dividends when it comes to the tax-conscious issue of carbon dioxide emissions. And the 1.5 litre variant, these are rated at 140 grams per kilometre, while on this 2 litre model, they're rated at 153 grams per kilometre. Both figures are 2 grams per kilometre better than they were before, and again, the stats aren't affected by the slightly heavier RF body style. Overall, we reckon that this MX-5 will cost you no more to run than a conventional Golf-sized family hatch, and maybe even slightly less. On to residual values, always a relative strong point with this car. The MX-5 is a favourite amongst used car buyers due to its relative simplicity, its strong reliability, and its low cost to insure. As a result, independent experts CAP reckon that after the usual 3-year, 60,000 mile ownership period, this car will retain between 39 and 42% of its original value. Get the usual 3-year, 60,000 mile warranty, and insurance groupings pitch it at 27E for the 1.5 litre Roadster model, it's 25E for the RF version, it's Group 33A for the 2 litre Roadster, and Group 32A for the 2 litre RF model. What else? Well, servicing should be affordable, and there's a useful vehicle status monitor maintenance section of the Mazda Connect infotainment screen. Plus there's a further selectable maintenance readout on the left-hand instrument binnacle gauge. To help you keep track of what work's been carried out, you can access a digital service record online and use a useful My Mazda app to receive reminders about servicing, book your car in at your local dealership, and also to access a digitally stored record of your model's service history. For the final word on this 4th generation MX-5, let's turn to the first thoughts of designer Masashi Nakayama when he sat down to create it. This, he decided, must be a car its customers would want to hold on to, one that could be driven for 20 years. Nakayama imagined himself as the owner of such a machine and simply hated the idea of eventually becoming bored of it. The thought of this, he said, was just too sad. I wanted this to be a car that I would love for a very long time, just as I do the original MX-5. We loved the Mark I original too, an emotive design diluted in its second and third generations, but reimagined here in this fourth generation form in a way that stirs the senses, just as an MX-5 should. This model's production engineering chief, Shinichi Yasui, says that in a 20-year career, he has never had such strong feelings of attachment to a car. And that's an emotion that you find replicated again and again if you read through the thoughts of the development team who are responsible for this model. The car they created certainly feels like one of the purest of its kind, with rear-wheel drive, perfect 50-50 weight distribution, and a power-to-weight ratio that makes the most of those substantial weight savings that this shorter, stiffer and safer ND Series MX-5 offers. That light curb weight is probably the most notable thing about this Mark IV model, but as we just suggested, there are plenty of others. Distinctive looks matched with comfort, technology and frugal efficiency too. The updates made to this model year 2024 design won't be enough to make you want an MX-5 if you weren't already tempted by one. But we think the bigger infotainment screen here and the stability system track mode are very worthwhile additions. The result, well, it's a sports car that more than ever will appeal to those who take a tactile pleasure from the sheer joy of driving. Not everyone gets the MX-5 experience, of course. Certainly won't appeal to those who prioritise power or people needing the practicality of a hot hatch or a sports coupe. At the other extreme, a specialist sports car maker like Caterham or Ariel could offer you a more intense experience, although that's one that would be, for the most part, largely irrelevant for public road use. That is where this Mazda excels. You don't need a test track, a racing driver's touch, or a lottery winner's wallet with this car. Just a back to basics love of driving, the way it ought to be.